It's time for one of my favorite bits. This is a follow-up to last week's Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, but it's time for Marvel in the 80s. And today we're talking about Web of Spider-Man number 29. Now this issue is written by Jim Owsley, a.k.a. Christopher Priest, with artwork, penciling by Steve Geiger, inking by Art Nichols, lettering by Rick Parker, and colors by Bob Sharon. So there you go. So this is kind of a follow-up to the Spider-Man vs. Wolverine one-shot that we talked about last week. And in the one-shot, Ned Leeds died. So let's just go over what happens in this book, and then we'll talk about more outside of this book that I just recently learned, thanks to Mark McGrath pointing me out to a Hobgoblin video by Comics Tropes. So we start at the funeral of Ned Leeds, and we get the credits. So the Rose shows up. This is Richard Fisk, son of the Kingpin. He has been recently revealed to be the Rose, and he shows up because he's been partnered with the Hobgoblin, and we now... There was some weird shit where they were revealing the Hobgoblin was Ned Leeds at this exact same time they killed him, and then they introduced a new Hobgoblin here. It's so weird, but the Rose shows up, and everybody's like, yo, what are you doing here? And he's like, fuck, blah, blah. Right? But he's got this bandage on his head because this follows up the Gang War story, which I'm actually rather fond of because I was reading Spider-Man comics at this time when I was getting into comics. It's my first few years. He's got his friend Alfredo who comes and picks him up. He's like a carefree kind of guy. He's got those Henry Geiger glasses going on, and he's taking him on, and he references that Ned Leeds was the Hobgoblin. They were working together. That he was feeding him stories. They were setting up Wilson Fisk, and now he's questioning... Since the death of his friend Ned, who was allegedly the Hobgoblin, we find out way later on that's not in fact true, but or it was, but whatever. We'll get into that. But he's questioning everything, right? Now we're cutting to Spider-Man. Not only has Spider-Man just recently gone through this whole gang war thing, not only did Spider-Man just recently suffer the death of a colleague, Ned Leeds, he also killed a woman in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine. Wolverine's lover, Charlie, who Charlemagne, the assassin ex-KGB, had come out of hiding, was being hunted down by all these various spy organizations, and kills herself by allowing her to distract Spider-Man in a moment of passion and heat and fighting, and Spider-Man decks her and kills her. Spider-Man's going through a fucking crisis. He wishes he could talk to someone, maybe Daredevil, but Daredevil's acting like a jerk. Right? And Mary Jane ain't it, but Felicia Hardy's staying at his place. Maybe he'll go chat with her. Then we go back to Robert Kingsley chatting with this other dude. I don't even remember who the fuck he is. Robert Kingsley is the dude that Roger Stern originally wanted to be the Hobgoblin. And in fact, when he did the Hobgoblin Lives miniseries in the 90s, which I remember reading, he revealed that it was always Robert Kingsley, and he set up Ned Leeds, brainwashed him, some shit like that. Whatever. That's all crazy. The Rose's assassins come in, and they're going to take care of them. And it looks like he gets shot in the shoulder, and the other dude comes, kills one of them, and whatever, right? Spider-Man then goes to his home to talk to Felicia Hardy. But she's not there, and he's like, oh, she's so carefree. I wish I could be the same way. This is a very dark era for Spider-Man, y'all. He's like always just like moping around and shit. Cut back to the Rose. Richard Fisk is there. And when I was a kid growing up, man, this was the Spider-Man stuff I was reading for the first time. These were the first Spider-Man books I read. It was this Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, this follow-up issue, the gang war, all that shit. I fucking loved the Rose and the Hobgoblin and all that shit. So the Rose is talking. He wishes he was carefree as well. Him and Spider-Man, him and Peter are kind of going through similar things, right? They're both kind of being very emo about the deaths of their recent friend Ned Leeds. That being said then, the Rose comes back home wearing his mask. His two compatriots are dead. And he's like, should have known that was going to happen, but the Hobgoblin shows up. And I remember when I was a kid thinking that he was like a fucking ghost. And how creepy this fucking looked. The artwork was great. So he attacks Richard Fisk. The Hobgoblin's out there killing his associates. He's like, you know what? I should get out while I'm ahead. But Alfredo's still there doing his deed. He's making sure that Hobgoblin, Ned Leeds, didn't have any dirt on Richard Fisk that he was going to find out. And then randomly, here we finally get Wolverine showing up towards the end of the issue. He finds Peter Parker moping. This dude shows up, tries to fucking steal Wolverine's wallet, flashes a knife at him. Wolverine flashes his claws. It breaks into a fight. Spider-Man's like, come on. He's being super mopey and all this kind of stuff, right? Wolverine's just trying to have fun. He's trying to talk to him. He's like, yo, the death of Charlie is not your fault. She wanted to die. The death of Ned Leeds is not your fault. That's the whole kind of point. Spider-Man even tells him at a certain point that he's ready to give it up. And Wolverine, Logan, tells him, you can't give up who you actually fucking are. So you need to come with me because you're still fucking Spider-Man. You need to come with me and get these dudes. And then he's like, you just want to go fight somebody. He's like, yeah, but you got to admit it was a great speech. I always loved that bit when I was a kid. Then we cut back to Alfredo. He's being stalked by the Hobgoblin. What's going to happen there? That's a dope, like, 80s James Bond type car, too. But, like, Timothy Dalton would have driven that, right? Anyway, Wolverine then goes and finds these punks that initially jumped them. He's now in costume, and I always loved that bit. And Spider-Man joins him, and Wolverine's like, hell yeah, you can't deny who you are. Meanwhile, Hobgoblin is still chasing Alfredo, and then you got this fucking fight between these gang members and Wolverine and Spider-Man. Wolverine's trying to inspire Spider-Man. It winds up all kind of coalescing together. They get passed after they beat this gang of people by Alfredo being chased by this new version of the Hobgoblin. Turns out that's Jack-O-Lantern, who has taken the guys after the death of Ned Leeds. We'll get into that in a second. He gets driven, or he rides off the bridge, allegedly dies, or at least the Rose thinks so, because he's hearing them as it's happening, so he's freaking out, but he gets saved by Spider-Man and Wolverine. And Wolverine's like, look, kid, chin up. Basically, Spider-Man's like, I'm going through a fucking crisis. Mary Jane, I can't talk to her. I can't talk to Felicia Hardy. I can't talk to Daredevil. Can't talk to anybody. Wolverine's like, chin up, soldier, and just goes. And the Rose is also going through a crisis of faith, leading to the next issue, True Confessions. And that is Spider-Man 29. Web of Spider-Man 29. So there's my original copy right there. I do have this copy that I did pick up, and it's beat to hell and back because this was going to be in the dollar bin. So I picked that up so I would have the direct market edition, because when I was a kid, I always wanted those ones more. But that's the one I had when I was a kid. This is actually in better condition than that one, but that's the one. And I never had issue 30. I have issue 28. I don't have 30. I have the ones before that, but I need to get an issue 30 to see how this wraps up. So basically, what's going on here, I'm going to show you everything, including all the ads here. So Owsley is Christopher Priest. He's 22 years old at the time, and definitely for a more accurate representation of this, check out the Comics Trope video. If anybody can, just type in, like Fable, if you're still here, or Steph, type in on YouTube, Comics Tropes Hobgoblin, find that video, how editors messed up Hobgoblin or whatever, and post that link in the chat, because that video is great. But Christopher Priest is the editor, 22 years old, editing his boss, Tom DeFalco, winds up getting a little bit power hungry. Roger Stern, when he first created Hobgoblin, wanted him to be Robert Kingsley. He never got to actually see that come to fruition. Tom DeFalco came in. He was edited by James Owsley, who is Christopher Priest. And Christopher Priest says he regrets everything, but basically he wanted to piss off Tom DeFalco, maybe just shoving his power around. Tom DeFalco wanted to reveal that Richard Fisk was going to be the Hobgoblin, which would have made sense, actually. God, that image right there always got me. Love that panel. That's a great panel. So is that one right there, actually. So he asked Tom DeFalco, who is Hobgoblin? He told him Ned Leeds, just kind of bullshitting. And so then Jim Owsley, without anybody else knowing, did the Spider-Man vs. Wolverine book, killed Ned Leeds, revealed that he was fucking, like, had Peter David do it or something. There's a lot more to it. Check out that Comics Tropes video. Yeah, Steph just threw it out there. Hell yeah. The reason why I like this was because of the Hobgoblin and Rose connection, but also because it was a follow-up to the Wolverine shit. I read this one first when I was a kid. Love that panel right there with screen tone used. Look at that. Beautiful. That middle panel right there. There's something about 80s classic Wolverine brown and tan. Something about it. But anyway, apparently he wrecked friendships. He fired Tom DeFalco. He killed Ned Leeds, and then brought in Jack O'Lantern. And then Roger Stern eventually got to come in and kind of no prize at all and say it was Robert Kingsley all along. But that Comics Trope video is really, really cool. Look at that House 2 ad. Fucking love House 2. Anyway, loved this one as a kid. It made me want to go pick up Spider-Man vs. Wolverine. I had already read Gang War. I remember at the same time, around this era, I was reading it was like Kraven's Last Hunt. I remember reading Life in the Mad Dog's Ward or something like that. Gang War, this. And then I kind of dipped out of Spider-Man for a while and came back in during the Mark Bagley era in particular, where it was like Round Robin and shit like that. But that is Spider-Man. That's Web of Spider-Man 29. It is a follow-up to that Spider-Man vs. Wolverine. Loved that cover when I was a kid. Loved the issue. Reading it now, it's actually a pretty well-done issue, to be honest with you. So I'd give it a 4 you digs out of 5. But hearing that backstory is absolutely crazy. And I would definitely encourage everybody afterwards to check out the link that Steph just put up to Comics Trope's video about this, because it's very informative and a lot of shit that I didn't even know. And that has been this week's segment of Marvel in the 80s.